We'll see how Cybernick works. This setup is incredibly Baroque at this point. It's so complicated. It is completely out of control.
This is so fucking complicated, I can't even believe it.
I know! So, it's okay. We're just recording local audio, remote audio, live streaming video that's running through an additional live audio source for Nick that is secretly a live video, like cutting-edge beta land
local video
transcoding.
Good thing CPUs are good now.
Yeah, let me just quickly open up twitch.tv on this computer and cause infinite echo forever so that I can monitor chat.
Oh, Christ. Welcome to the Idle Thumbs Ruination Online for December 2017. This is the podcast on which we answer questions posed to us by high-tier subscribers to our Patreon campaign. More information there at patreon.com/idlethumbs if you're interested in asking us questions on this podcast. We are now streaming this with what I would say is the second most complicated Idle Thumbs live streaming setup we've ever used.
What was the first most complicated? For
the like one where we had one where we had like Steve and Danielle and everyone call in.
This is episode 300. Yeah.
Episode 300 of Idle Thumbs. Yeah, this is now, I guess, how we're just going to be doing this every month, which is Nick remotely patched in for both the live stream and the recorded one.
Yep.
And it's working pretty well. If you're watching on Twitch or YouTube, you will see Nick Brecken's face in at least one place, possibly more places on screen. Because
Stay tuned for additional Nick Brecken virtual appearances.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, let's get into questions.
Let's dig in.
Oh yeah, I'm Chris Remo.
Oh, I'm Nick Brecken.
I'm Jake Rodkin.
Okay.
What?
Welcome.
You guys, whatever. I can't even play along. There's no fun anymore.
You're just such a snide player along. You play along with such a snide.
I liked being described as a snide player along.
All right, so we have a question from Stephen Norrie, who writes, "Life has got in the way and left me 3 months behind in my podcast listening. So, please show me what good futurists you are, and give me a prediction on what will happen in the world between time of recording and mid-February when I'll actually be able to listen to this." That's such a bleak, honestly.
I know, God,
that's
Jesus.
such a distressing, terrible thing to have to think about or do in the world right now. I don't really think I want to. I don't know, like, the holidays will happen and hopefully you have a fun time. Hopefully you did have a fun time over the holidays and New Year. And weird robots will get smarter, probably.
Yeah. There'll be a lot of like pre-Olympics hype.
Oh, when do the Olympics start?
I think February.
Seriously?
So you won't get to
the
watch
Olympics. Are always such a surprise to me.
Yeah.
Will any nation? Will our nation be in the Olympics? See, it gets bad. Anything is bad.
Yeah,
anything you talk about is fucking bad.
There's a bleak, possible outcome to it.
Mm-hmm.
We'll be recording this podcast and we'll be happy and you'll be happy. You'll be listening to us and everything will be great.
Our recording setup will get even more complicated and ridiculous. Even more Nick Breckens will be composited into every.
Oh, I'm already doing that actually during the recording.
Well, you know what? We'll have all of our postcards caught up and sent out. I'm gonna plant that flag in the ground. I'm gonna say our Patreon backers who have paid for postcards.
The next month should be showing up on Tuesday, so we can get those out before Christmas.
Before we all go out of town for
yeah.
Okay, good.
Nice.
Postcards coming. Hilarious that we have to say every single month. They're still coming.
We sent out a shitload of postcards recently, though.
Hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of postcards recently.
There's a really good video of Chris unable to get them all into the mailbox that we put out.
If you go to our YouTube channel, you can find a proof of me mailing a bunch of postcards with Jake.
Will there still be video games, asks chat, in 3 mons? I don't know. Hopefully not.
Yeah, there'll be some of them probably.
Oh, okay.
Will Spelunky 2 be out by then? Probably not.
No.
Will that wacky game that Derek Yu of Spelunky is contributing to? The one with dozens of...
the 50 arcade game. Or the 50 NES game.
I don't know when any game comes out anymore.
Video games.
There'll probably be 14 more Marvel movies and 3 more Star Wars movies by then, I'm guessing.
Yep.
Mitch Mastroni writes, "Hello, Thumbs. I've been working for a small game studio for just over a year. Up until recently, we were operating out of the living room of my boss's apartment. In the past month, we moved into a dedicated office, but it still doesn't feel like a real professional workplace. It's more like a collection of sit-stand desks and cardboard boxes piled high with wires and controllers. In designing and modifying the workspaces of Idle Thumbs, Camposanto, etc., what have you found to be the most important or most frequently overlooked amenities and features of a comfortable workspace? Happy holidays and Fuknik Brecken."
What?
I actually really like this question.
Yeah.
I think that's a cool question. I bet Jake has a lot to say about this.
Because I care too much about office amenities?
Yeah, but I think there's something that is like intrinsic in that, even aside from the specifics of Jake. I mean, I think, honestly, the most important thing if you're creating an office space is to care about it.
Yep.
Like, which can go literally all the way down to at least one person cares enough to basically keep it tidy to a certain baseline. Like, I mean, I think people definitely are different in this regard, because, I keep my personal desk pretty messy, and I'm able to just deal with that. But shared spaces, common areas, workspaces, when they are sort of just cluttered and not taken care of and sort of grimy, it's like depressing to me. Like, it makes me feel bummed to come to work. I don't like it. The benefit of having a well taken care of space is so you just cannot be overstated.
Yeah, I think that the number one thing in this person's email is they say it doesn't feel like an office because it's more of a collection of sit-stand desks and cardboard boxes piled high with wires and controllers. In my opinion, whether it's like your apartment or your house, if you have cardboard boxes full of shit,
Yeah.
that is the thing that will make it feel like you want to die all the time. Go to IKEA or the Container Store or something and just buy some wire mesh shelves, put them on the emptiest wall in the back corner, and just put all of those boxes on those shelves and get them the fuck out of your line of sight. And then as you start needing things from them, bring single items back out of the boxes until you've built an office. Like, if you don't have it in you to move in all the way, at least get the shelves or get the boxes away from your life, and it will feel a lot better.
Buying cheap storage and shelving goes a long way. I would say we have an example of this just from the last week. So, we have these Patreon postcards that we send out that we just alluded to, obviously. And because of the way it works, we had this interactive story written by Nick. It means that a given month, like one single month of postcards might have, like, Nick, what's the highest number of postcards in a given month so far?
9.
8 or 9, yeah.
Yeah, so some months have like 9 different postcard variants.
Yep.
And then you multiply that by, Jake, is your phone flashlight intentionally on?
What?
And so, you multiply that by the number of months we've had, which are like 11 or coming up on like 11 or so, I think, at this point. That's so many different postcard variants, and each one has like a couple hundred cards, so we have enough for everyone. And Jake just like a week ago ordered some just like cheap plastic bins that are the exact width of our postcards, and then
They're super long, like a card catalog or like a comic book nerd archive box.
Exactly, and then we organized them by month and by variant, and the difference between having them like spread across 3 of those versus just having these stacked, piles of postcards, it makes the Idle Thumbs studio feel so much more legit and organized. And they were not they were not expensive. We thought they were going to be expensive. It turns out they weren't. And it required very little effort, and it goes a huge way, both because, 1, it gets rid of clutter, but 2, I think there's like a psychological effect where when you see something that looks like it is fit to purpose for the thing it does, you're like, oh, this place is like intentional and organized. That goes a long way.
The other things that I recommend are a few comfortable places to sit. Like, I bought a shitty couch. I bought a mid-range IKEA couch and put it next to where our TV was, because we used to have like just a couple office chairs there, and it suddenly feels way more like a room. Also, I very strongly advocate getting like a sort of vintage stained glass Pizza Hut lamp that is delivered and sent to your office, and then before it gets there that it's smashed into a bunch of pieces and causes all sorts of hijinks and lame eBay adventures. It really brings an office workspace together to be delivered a just totally destroyed stained glass Pizza Hut lamp that you'd been hyping up for like 2 weeks because you thought it was going to be a hilarious thing in the office. It was.
But
classic storytelling.
Yeah.
I wanted something else than what I got, but what I got
That's a classic show don't tell situation.
Yeah, well, it's
don't
just-
tell people about this pristine Pizza Hut lamp. Show them this garbage box of
Yeah.
shattered glass.
Well, like
representing
fans
your
have been
failed
saying
dreams.
forever that they can't wait to see the Pizza Hut lamp, but like,
Give people what they need, not what they
yeah,
want.
not what they want. What they need is a hilarious, destroyed,
Yeah.
cursed image in a box.
Yep.
So get one of the. Once your office is nice and comfortable, make sure to then ship just a big pile of garbage into the middle of it, and the contrast that it creates will be very, very wonderful.
That's exactly right. All right, we have an email from Juicy who writes, oh, God, this is the person who told me how to pronounce their name last time, and I already forget. Yusi? Sorry.
Jesus
it's fascinating
Christ.
to me how we borrow from nature.
Fascinating how you
names
mispronounce my
badly.
name every week. Yeah.
It's fascinating to me how we borrow from nature when designing robots and other pieces of technology. See, for example, Stanford Sticky Box. What? Sticky Bot. Sticky Bot. Stanford Sticky Bot. What is that?
Sticky Bot.
Stanford Sticky Bot.
Juicy
And the
Stanford Sticky Bot.
and the Festo Robotic Seagull. What are these things? Are you making these up? Stanford Sticky Bot and the Festo Robotic Seagull.
It's fascinating
I don't
how
know,
you
this
just
is
make
real.
things up.
It's fascinating.
Nick's looking
Other
them up.
examples include swimming suits that borrow their texture from shark skin, and obviously robots with various leg configurations. In your position as celebrity robot experts, what kind of interesting animal features would you like to see borrowed for future robots?
Done.
Yeah.
What are some animals that are like really meek and deferential to humans and
Yeah.
are not predators?
Right.
Those ones. I want
Yeah.
those traits borrowed from robots, mainly.
Oh, like little dogs.
Like cows?
Yeah, like
No,
no.
No?
any of these are bad because
I guess bulls are pretty aggressive.
Yeah,
Well, yeah.
potentially. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, if they could be easily.
Chad says more worm robots. That's true. Give me like a little caterpillar that sort of just
No,
Oh,
that's
no, no.
'Cause those can
They
then-
just can find
They
their
can
way
go
into things. It's
anywhere.
fine,
Yeah,
Chris.
exactly. They can
Into
get into
places.
doors,
They can
under
get
doors.
anywhere.
They can
Into
through
you.
little cracks.
They're
Oh,
probably
gross.
slimy somehow. Ugh.
Yeah, they exude some kind of
Yeah.
gelatinous substance
Yeah.
to facilitate squeezing into areas. Ugh. Don't like it.
I don't know, you guys. I think it's fine.
You think what's fine?
Just robots.
You think robots are fine?
Yeah.
Great insight from Jake.
They're good.
True.
They love you,
I don't want them to love me. I don't want them to have opinions.
Chris.
What are you doing over there?
What?
I can't
Nothing.
Stop clicking. I think that's all going to come through in the recording.
No one will know. Sorry, I'll never
Oh,
click again.
God.
Mickey P. Oh, this is a good question, relative given what we're doing right now. Mickey P. writes, is it possible, hypothetically, that in the future all three of you may be in different places and recording the podcast entirely remotely? And if so, would you release a video of three monitors talking to each other in an otherwise empty studio?
That's the dream,
That's
my
the
friend.
fucking dream,
That is
yeah.
the dream, that I eventually clamp three monitors on here and then just project our Skypes, but somehow I'm able to remotely admin this
Yeah,
studio and start all the recording up.
The situation in which we're all in different places but are still paying to operate this studio is
Yeah.
a fascinating one.
It's kind of disturbing to me.
Yeah.
Just the idea, like you could play like a recording of us on loop, and we would just be in that room. This room, oh no,
You're here, Nick.
You're
You've
always
been here.
I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
Do you feel like you're here, Nick?
No, I feel like I'm watching the podcast that I'm in. It actually is kind of a surreal existential
yeah.
experience because I get the view that is just like what a viewer would normally
I really need
see.
to put the
So it's-
monitor up on
Right.
top of
Yeah.
you, and then
Yeah.
it'll be fine.
Yeah.
It
That
is-
is
it
that
is.
is weird. Yeah.
It is
You're hav-
incredibly strange,
you're
but it's
having a
fine.
sort of,
Actually,
like-
like my brain has accepted it now.
Yeah.
This is my reality. I'm living in it. It's fine. But
You're
like,
having an enforced out of body experience.
yeah, it's very strange.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you're just getting acclimated to it every week. We're preparing you, Nick, for the inevitable decoupling of consciousness from the corporeal form that will happen in the sort
Yeah.
of AI, robot,
That's true.
singularity, probably between now and February, I would say. Yeah. Sometime in that rough time frame.
I mean, the other thing is that I am kind of just watching a movie of myself. I mean, it is like I am just watching.
Oh,
the
yeah,
camera
you've also
pers-
got the Total Recall experience.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's bizarre.
yeah, well, you're creating that movie. You're the creator.
That's true.
You're the director.
That's true. I can't move the camera though. If I had like a webcam, like
you had a little-
web-based
Oh,
applet
yeah,
or
yeah,
something
yeah,
where
yeah.
I could actually like
Oh, if you
position
had a web-based
the camera.
applet.
Web-based applet. That's It wouldn't really need to be a web-based or an applet, Nick. It
That's
could just be
true.
software.
No, I just want it to be
But let's
like.
go with web-based
I want it to be.
applet.
Yeah, no.
I want it to be the thing, like, when you like pipe into like a zoo and they have the little like slow motion controls and you can sort of push in. And, yeah.
And it requires you to have like Java installed in some old
Right,
version of Flash.
Yeah.
And you have to be running it on Internet Explorer 3.
Yep. That's
Yeah.
what I want.
Okay.
Someone make Nick a web-based applet. Brian Brannon writes, having just finished seeing it myself, if you've seen The Last Jedi, what did you think? Not looking for spoiler talk, I've just been surprised at how contentious the reactions have been online.
Huh. Oh boy.
Yeah, I know. This feels like a minefield.
Oh.
I actually don't know what the reaction has been online. I kind of just don't pay attention to that stuff at this point because it doesn't add anything to my life. But
It's been very divisive.
I mean, I can understand why, because my own reaction to it is divisive.
Yeah.
To itself.
I have the same reaction.
I thought this movie had some of the best ideas and imagery
Yeah.
in any Star Wars movie since the original Star Wars films.
Yeah.
But I also thought it was way too long and had way too many characters and plot threads in it that could have been straight up removed and the movie wouldn't have suffered
It
at
was
all.
really
It was-
overstuffed with those ideas, I found.
Yeah. And I don't know. I enjoyed watching it, but it's a classic case where the more I think about it, the more I wished it was just like 2/3 of the length, maybe, and just like really, really, really smartly edited. And I think this is something that is like broadly kind of a frustrating trend in big action movies right now, which is that they're just really long. This is the longest Star Wars movie by a considerable margin, and it's just sort of beyond me why a movie like this needs to be more than 2.5 hours long. I don't get it. But there was beautiful stuff in it. I mean, some of the visuals were astonishing, and people who have seen the film would, probably share a lot of the opinions on which elements those were, and like a lot of the stuff that happened was really fun. So, I'm mixed.
Yep. People in chat are asking if this is spoiler talk for the newest Star Wars movie. We didn't say
I don't think
spoiled
we haven't
anything.
spoiled
We're not spoiling
anything.
anything.
Yeah.
No.
No, the question specified.
Just
I'm
what did
not
we
looking for
think?
any spoiler
Yeah.
talk.
Just generally. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, just like on a moment-to-moment basis, I feel like this movie had some of the highest highs of at least of these two movies. I think also of probably of all of the sort of 4 through 8 bracket of films, but it also had kind of lower lows for me than maybe The Force
agree.
Awakens did. Like the execution of certain scenes, I kind of just bumped on, and it kind of. I don't know. It was like a roller coaster for me, where I was like, from one scene to the next, it was like, oh man, that was really well done, and then just it was sort of a strange experience. I enjoyed watching it, and
me too.
I'm very curious to see it again. I guess I just generally, as much as I feel like I don't know where I really stand on it, I also am kind of glad that I watched a Star Wars movie and it is divisive in my own brain and on the internet. Like, I actually like that it's interesting enough that it's not just like a Marvel film where you watch it and it's entirely disposable. I don't know. I mean, I might end up kind of deciding that it didn't quite work for me, but like at least I have to think about it,
Mm-hmm. You know what I thought was definitely great, which could have been very bad, were the performances of Mark Hamill and Carrie Fisher, which I thought were total
They were super
standouts
good.
in the film.
Yeah.
In fact, I thought especially Mark Hamill, which I only say because he wasn't really in the last one, unlike Carrie
he just
Fisher, who was a
glowered
little
for like
bit.
2 seconds.
Right. Like he was, his whole, not only his performance, but also just like what that character was given to do, I thought was pretty great.
Yeah.
Which again could have just been nothing. Like it actually, some of the younger cast was, I thought, outshone by his character and performance, which was shocking, and I would have not expected. So good job to, I guess, him and the director, Rian Johnson, for making a lot out of that.
Yeah.
Yep.
Jake has no opinions.
No, I mean, I lean maybe overall more positive than you, just in terms of how much I enjoyed that movie and probably will watch it again. But I share all of your criticisms basically to a T.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah.
All right, well, now we can answer this next question from Alex Schroeder, who says, since the obligatory Last Jedi question has already been asked, let's try this. Do you have any opinion on the recent shutdown of Marvel Heroes after its license was revoked by Disney? In particular, what does this say about the future of licensed games in a world where online games are increasingly common?
Wow,
I don't really know.
I was not very aware of that game at all.
I wasn't either. It probably doesn't matter. Like the specifics of this game,
Yeah.
I mean, they certainly matter to people who played it. But in the broader sense, this is obviously just a weird property, like a inevitable reality of a world in which so many games now are intrinsically tied to their online component. I mean, this...
It's a mix, though, right? Because the fact that it's a licensed game and the fact that it's online is combined.
both.
Like, I worked on Wallace and Gromit's Grand Adventures, a Telltale game based on the Wallace and Gromit cartoons that was on the Xbox 360 and PC. And at a certain point, I think that the game just over its life didn't sell well enough that the license wasn't renewed with Aardman Studios. And the fact that game is a digital-only game, not that it's a multiplayer game, but the fact that it had very few hard copies ever available. It was mostly sold through Steam. You just can't buy it anymore.
Yeah.
Like, I made a game that you just literally you can't play without pirating or digging up a very rare eBay copy, which I think has like Sony Secure ROM on it, so you still have to crack it.
Oh no.
And that's like, so it's not necessarily that it's a multiplayer game in this situation as much as it's a digital.
It is both,
it's a
though.
digital, yes, but the fact that it's digitally sold.
Yeah.
Oh, I just realized I played this
but
game.
licensed is
Oh, you
why
did?
is really interesting.
What's the deal?
I
What
talked
is
about
it?
this game on Idle Thumbs. I played it for like a couple
wow,
of days,
really?
like a year
Okay.
and a half or 2 years ago. It was
Yeah.
led up, I think, initially by Dave Brevik, the Diablo, like the original,
yeah, you know
one
what?
of the original Diablo
You're
guys.
You're
Yeah.
right.
Yeah,
The
it
founder
was
of
really
Condor
just sort of
Studios, right?
Yeah, it was a Diablo
Which made
clone.
Diablo 1.
Yeah. It was just a Marvel licensed sort of Diablo alike, and it
Yeah.
was fine.
Sure.
But anyway, sorry, I
mean-
didn't mean to interrupt you, Jake.
No,
I was done. I said
yeah.
everything I needed to say.
I mean, I think this is all of this stuff is then compounded by, I think, the further consolidation of the entertainment industry. I mean, Disney owns obviously everything that Disney traditionally owned, plus Marvel, plus Star Wars, plus now all of the Fox properties. I mean, I think
Like Marvel and Star Wars.
yeah, that's right. I think the more that happens, on top of all these other sort of the intrinsic kind of multiple stakeholders problems of licensed properties, plus the intrinsic fragility of games that run online, I think entertainment consolidation also adds further sort of precariousness to situations like these, because when the rights are held by a larger entity that owns so many other properties, the chances that any one of them is going to be long-term protected just goes down, because it represents a smaller percentage of that corporation's like bread and butter or
just
interest,
attention.
or
Yeah.
like an executive who's going to fight for it or
the
whatever.
disposability of all of this stuff goes way up.
Yeah.
I mean, that
Yeah.
should be also obvious by the fact that we're getting between 1 and 3 or 4 movies, like fully theatrically released movies based on these properties every year. Like,
Yeah.
just, as opposed to
Plus TV shows.
As opposed to,
plus,
like, 2 decades of there only being 3 Star Wars movies.
Right. Yeah.
Which already was notable that there were 3 of them for that long. Like,
Yep.
one of the rare trilogies that were connected to that intense of a degree.
Yeah.
Now we have 3
the-
interconnected phases of comic
Right.
book movies, each of which have a dozen entries in them or something. So
it's pretty clear that the model is no longer like, I mean, there's always been cheap disposable merchandise associated with this stuff, but
the sort of intellectual property that exists outside of each individual work is the foundation now, as opposed to the individual works themselves.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
And so I think
Like the existence of Iron Man is more important than the movie Iron Man.
Right. Yeah, that's a really good way of putting it. Yeah.
Yep.
So I guess
It's like we're going all in on the Darth Vader IP. I mean, Disney's basically trying to turn Star Wars into that by making all these standalone movies that highlight each of the individual characters.
No,
and,
it's great.
you know, they're
Yeah.
trying to divorce them from
it's actually
the original movies.
It's actually sort of turning it into the way that like superhero comics
yes.
worked, which is you have these like trunks for each of the characters and then all the spin-offs.
I think that it's not quite literally what the Marvel movies are doing, but I think that they're trying. They're trying to
comic
sort of
books.
Yeah, I know, but I mean, well, the Marvel movies have basically tried to do that with movies.
Yeah.
I don't think the Star Wars will ever become quite as like pulled apart as something that starts.
I
as
think
a comic
that's probably true, but that is like
the hope seems to be that they can turn each of the individual pieces into its own sort of pillar of a vague intellectual property.
Yep, pieces into pillars. That's our entertainment world.
That's P2P.
P2P. All right, Resmi says,
Garth Vader. What is sorry.
Chris, did you ever read The Bone Clocks by David Mitchell? If so, what did you think? And because I haven't asked one of these questions in a while, anyone have any good fiction recommendations? I'm a slow and infrequent reader, so you may have covered this on the Bookcast, which is piling up in my podcast feed, sadly.
Speaking of interconnected universes.
That's true. I did not read The Bone Clocks, even though I've really loved multiple David Mitchell books because my wife read it when it came out, and she unintentionally, she sort of poisoned the well for me by being kind of meh on it, and then I just didn't have the enthusiasm to read it myself. In part because, actually sort of weirdly related to everything we were just talking about, one of the things that's happened in
that's why I said that.
David Mitchell's work in recent years, and David Mitchell is the author of Cloud Atlas, and as this reader mentioned, The Bone Clocks, and my personal favorite, The Thousand Autumns of Jacob Dezote, and a bunch of other novels. He's sort of doing this thing that a lot of authors have done is sort of implicitly, but he's doing it a lot more explicitly, which is to thread a lot of the background and lore of his novels, which you'd think should be read individually, into a kind of shared mythos. And I just don't like that stuff. And it sounds like The Bone Clocks was a big step in that direction. And so I kind of was just like, ugh, I don't really. Not for me. This world of never-ending franchises is not the one I would create if I could, but it's the one we're in. As far as fiction recommendations generally, I don't know. I mean, it really depends what you like. Fiction is so huge. We for the book club, we're super late on our next episode, which was supposed to come out by now, but hasn't yet. But it's N.W. by Zadie Smith, and that book is fantastic, and I would recommend it. It's a full-length novel. If you want something short, I would recommend, because it was on my mind because Kazuo Ishiguro just won the... God, did he win the Booker or the Nobel? I think he won...
This isn't out of book club, we don't know.
I think he...
Nick...
Anyway, I just had him on my mind because he won a major literary award recently, and he wrote this novel decades ago called The Remains of the Day, which was made into a movie with Anthony Hopkins, which I haven't seen the movie, but the book is good. One of the best novels I've ever read, and I mention it because it's short, so if you're a slow reader, it's a pretty easy read, but it's just a beautiful, wonderful, incredibly poignant novel, The Remains of the Day by Kazuo Ishiguro, an English novelist. If you want something really funny but also just totally brutal, read The Sellout by Paul Beatty, I believe. I should have looked this up beforehand. That came out this year and is a sort of a satirical novel about basically about race in America. And it's fiction and it's funny, but it's also, because of its subject matter, it is just no holds barred. It is a totally bonkers read. The Sellout. It's worth reading. All right, we'll move on unless you guys have any recommendations.
I don't.
Nothing off the top of my head, no.
Doug Tobacco.
What?
Yep, our stalwart web engineer who has been with Idle Thumbs since the beginning, but has never asked a question in this Ruination cast before, asks his first question.
Do you want to update your SSL certification?
Doug writes, according to the lyrics to the song The 12 Days of Christmas, each day's gifts appear to include a set of the previous day's gifts. So by the end of the 12th day, the singer has received from their true love the following: 12 partridges in pear trees, 22 turtle doves, 30 French hens, 36 calling birds, 40 gold rings, 42 geese a-laying, 42 swans a-swimming, 40 maids a-milking, presumably with associated cows, 36 ladies dancing, 30 lords a-leaping, 22 pipers piping, and 12 drummers drumming.
You missed
There's
60
no
roast beef
question
sandwiches,
here.
but anyway.
Just a lot of birds and a decent haul on gold rings.
That's very good.
I'm really interested.
The curve of that is good, actually.
The curve is
Yeah,
interesting
yeah.
because some of them end up having the same number. Like there's 40 gold rings and 40 maids of milking.
There's no question there. It's just Doug being flashy
It's
with
just
his
good
Christmas Carol
information.
knowledge. Yeah.
It never really occurred to me before. It is, I mean, I know that this is something that's obvious, that's sort of easy to notice when you're listening to the song The 12 Days of Christmas, but this really lays out
There's like
how many like human beings are
I know.
transacted in this. Like, what are you going to do with
Yeah.
40 fucking maids, 36 ladies?
There's a very good visual
30
presentation of this
leaping
that
lords.
could be made of someone just receiving gifts from this person, and every day just like dump trucks of people and like more rings.
Lords.
Like, God,
Yeah.
another, like, how many more leaping lords do I need? And they just all played by individual actors,
Yeah,
like just
right.
different guys wearing the same outfit. Or just
drummers.
Yeah.
Jesus, that one gets pretty
like,
annoying pretty fast.
Like, my God.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Why is leaping lords not used as a sort of quaint, old-timey exclamation? You know?
I don't know. It's a good like old timey holiday exclamation. Actually,
Yeah.
Just
Yeah. Leaping lords.
leaping lords. There's so many lords of leaping in my house.
Mm-hmm.
Leaping lords, will you please get those drummers out of here? Then the actual leaping lords. Like, you mean us?
We have no jurisdiction over these drummers.
The lords we may be, the drummers belong to you.
Yeah. And then there's sort of a additional bit of information tacked on here by a different reader, and I don't know what this means exactly, but Daniel says, and 40 rings were given to the race of men, who above all else desire partridges.
Wait, what is this? Why is this Lord of the Rings lore? in
I don't
here?
know. I don't know. And then there's an edit to this post that says, in the 12 Days edition of Lord of the Rings, the title is a dual meaning because while the song 12 Days of Christmas plays over the movie, 12 days is also the amount of time that Frodo and the hobbits last against the 40 ringwraiths after them. Is any of that
Doug, or is
true?
this just someone else?
No, this is someone else.
No, this is someone just doing some lore building on top of this ring stuff.
Yeah.
I don't know how much of this is real or not because I don't know enough about Lord of the Rings.
None of that is real, Chris.
I don't
Lord of
think
the
any of
Rings
that
is
is
not,
real.
in fact, based on a popular Christmas carol.
Well, I assumed that, but I could also imagine the publisher of the Lord of the Rings selling a Christmas book for children.
That would never be allowed. Until Christopher Tolkien dies, that will not happen. And then
Oh,
the day
really?
that he dies, that will happen.
Yeah.
Pastoral Mac in chat says, you could just ask the drummers not to drum and the lords not to leap. Now you've just got a bunch of very talented friends.
That's true. You could make a really good, OK Go music video out of all this shit.
To the tune of the 12 Days of Christmas.
Yeah, God, that would be a thing that band would do at
Yes,
this point.
OK
It would
Go
be
presents 12 Days of Christmas
sponsored
in one
by,
take.
Sponsored by some cheese company or something
Yeah.
to make a 12 Days of Christmas pop variant with this. All right. Polybats asks, if you had to choose a foreign cuisine to eat every day but couldn't choose which particular dishes to eat, what would you choose and why? Also, I'm looking forward to walking in Egypt. I like this question. I think it's a good question. I like it. Nick, I have a guess as to yours.
What's your guess?
My guess would
I
be
know what I would
French.
say. You say French? Yeah, that's
Yeah.
exactly what it would be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah,
It's a
I
safe
saw
bet.
this. No, it is, and it's a good one too. I mean, I was talking to Sarah last night, and I noticed, I sort of was glancing at the questions last night, and I saw that this one had come in, and I just asked her, what would you say to this? And I think she at this point she was like, well, I would say French now too, and she's like, I never understood why Nick was so obsessed with all these French food recipes for years until we went to France for the first time this year, and the quality of food there is it's so stupid.
Bonkers.
It's a cliche thing to say, but it is legitimately true. So it's a totally understandable instinct.
Yeah.
My first instinct would be to say Italian because it's what I was literally raised on. I mean,
You would just be given something that you probably liked all the time.
yeah. I mean,
a comfortable thing from your childhood always.
right, especially if it's legitimate. I grew up eating home cooked Italian food by my dad every day, so my sort of default answers would be Italian because I know it so well, French, and then Levantine cuisine, like the food of sort of the kind of Arabic area bordering the Mediterranean, because I just choose to eat that so much in my life because I love it so much, which is things like hummus and tabbouleh and baba ganoush and falafel and kebab and things like that. But it occurs to me that that's just the perspective of someone who is an American who eats the versions of all that stuff that is served here. And I don't know, like, I'm not deeply familiar enough with those actual like places to be able to confidently say like, yes, I know enough about this to like, I might just have the cartoon version of it. I don't know.
Right. You would like Vancouver, Chris. There's a lot of really good Turkish food just like right around the corner from us, and just a lot of like fantastic Japanese food.
I'd say that I would just take a pretty safe risk as a nerd, and I would just also to give a different answer than you guys. I would just, why not Japan? Sure. I've not had a lot of food from Japan other than what's served in America, so that's a completely insane thing for me to say and just throw my entire diet of the rest of my life somewhere
You would definitely
else.
be surprised by some of the things. And I'm not saying that because of you. I'm saying that because I definitely was.
I don't know. I'm a lazy eater in the place in which I live. But when I go anywhere else, I try to eat things that are different, and I generally enjoy it because it's food. And if other people have been eating it for hundreds of years, it's probably going to be good if I get myself used to it.
Good instinct, I think.
And Japanese is an easy jump. It's it's an easy blind leap to make for me who exists.
Yeah.
So why not?
There you go. Okay. Here's a funny question related to that in a different direction. Michael Jakes asks, what's the best fast food dessert?
Oh, God.
Best fast food dessert?
Yeah.
Does a like dessert-focused place like Dairy Queen count?
I don't see why not.
Yeah.
You don't think so?
I'm
Nick?
going to go, well, maybe. I don't know. I feel like dessert implies like a dessert menu of another,
Well, Dairy Queen also serves a hamburger and fries.
That's true. I always forget they have actual food there.
Yeah. I think that's fair enough.
My
easy
personal
answer for me is-
favorite.
go ahead.
Jake. Oh, no. We have our first
no.
Skype like weird moment.
Nick,
I hate it.
Nick, you go.
I was just going to say the Wendy's Frosty. It's just
same. Wendy's chocolate frosty. Easy, good,
Yeah.
done.
It's the classic.
Taco Bell cinnamon twists. Number 2.
Yeah, that's my number 2 as well. Yeah.
All right. If I could live off any cuisine, it would be American fast food desserts.
I was just gonna say milkshake because I wasn't familiar.
That is
enough with
which
the
one,
specific-
Chris? They're very
I know,
different.
I don't know, but yeah, that would have. Some form of that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
Like
some
an In-N-Out milkshake or something.
crappy packaged cheesecake from somewhere. I have a total soft spot for that kind of shit, but I don't know which
The
one.
lack of specificity is very upsetting.
I know
here,
because I
Chris.
don't know off the top of my head. Ian McNichol asks, my coworker and I were having a discussion at lunch about Soylent and other meal replacements. A lot of food questions
This
here.
is a food zone.
One side of the discussion believed that eventually the utility and affordability of such replacements will lead to the disappearance of food, which will only exist as a luxury. The other side claimed that food is such a deeply embedded part of human culture that it could never be replaced. On which side do you fall in this discussion?
I think that food, at least like freshly prepared food, is one of the few things that can't be sort of commodified and shipped in a box to someone. I mean, you can have a courier deliver it to you, but it still comes from a restaurant.
Sure.
And I think that there's just going to be a middle ground where I don't think we're going to devolve entirely into a Soylent society, but I think
things like the
like-
Impossible Burger, or like if you know anything about that, which is what they're
Right.
making, they're attempting to make meat basically in a lab that responds like meat, like when you cook it, it bleeds,
juicy,
and people who've eaten it say it's actually fairly
doesn't
convincing.
bleed. Let's be clear. Your meat doesn't bleed when you cook it.
red
No, I'm
juice
saying
comes
real
out of
meat
it.
doesn't. Yeah. It's not bleeding, but
Well,
yes, it's got juice. Yeah.
It's got that, yeah.
But that's still. I mean, I don't know where you're going from that. I mean, you're right. I mean, whether or not food is where your source of food is grown, whether it's actually like inside of a cow that is butchered or not, or if your lettuce is grown under a grow lamp or under the sun, it turning into a thing that a person wants to eat still requires some degree of preparation and care and freshness. I mean, maybe
It's really hard to say though, because
maybe-
you look
I mean-
at so many industries. Like you look at clothing or something, which is I would imagine that given the history of like the textile industry and clothing and fashion and things like that, it probably must have seemed absolutely impossible that clothing could have been mass produced, a certain point ago, because it requires so many, it's like delicate operations, and it's such humans are all different shapes, and
I think
but now, I mean,
yeah.
Or like
I don't
IKEA.
know.
I think sustained, maintained temperature is so fundamentally tied to energy expenditure that having to keep things heated or cooled over time for them to get from the place they need to get to you and still present as a meal is so complicated that will be very expensive for a long time, or we'll just energy starve our planet to death. I mean,
I
that's like why
feel like
Soylent exists, is because it
Right.
doesn't require any of that shit. You just
I mean,
dump
it
it into
feels
your
like we're
body.
almost talking around the question, though. I mean, part of what you're saying, Jake, might actually, I think, work against what you're claiming, which is that the sort of cost and complexity of preparing and delivering like freshly cooked and made food that looks and feels and has all of the sensory expectations we have of food might become cost prohibitive, right? I mean,
I think middle of the road kind of okay food that is still like exponentially a far cry from Soylent will be locally available at a reasonable rate for a long time.
Yeah.
I think like luxury dining experiences are going the way of like first class airline seats, where that's
Right,
just
right.
exponentially also
think
going
you're right.
through the roof.
I think you're
for
right.
like, I can have a $1,500 fixed price menu where everything is only prepared over like aged wood logs, like
Right.
whatever. Like that's
No, I
we're
think
blocks away from a place that's almost that.
I think you're totally right. That's how so many things in society are going, for sure. Is you have the mass market version of it, and then you have the super, super nice version of it, and increasingly little.
I think though, like the middle class of food will continue to exist for a while, for the reason that this person was arguing of just like eating is just a thing that we need.
Yeah.
But I think that both the Soylent side will grow and take up more space, and also the 1% of like fine dining will probably continue to like refine itself higher and higher up.
I think that's probably true.
But I don't know enough.
Yeah, I think it's a reasonable guess. Reggie Clark asks, what are some of your Christmas traditions? My wife and I have, for the last 3 years, this is the cheesiest, most like default, not most default, but it is a very unimaginative Christmas tradition. But we, for every year for the past 3 years, have gone to see the Nutcracker at the San Francisco Ballet. It's such a cheesy thing. And like, I'm someone who, I guess just for a lot of reasons, like doesn't have a lot of sentimentality around things like the holidays or like spending time with family or whatever. Like that stuff doesn't really resonate with me, but it does for my wife, and so like it's been really kind of almost fun to just like make an affirmative choice to be like, yeah, let's go do this cheesy thing every year, which is also just a thing that is like fantastic music. I mean, but it's also a way for me to condition myself to the enjoyment of just like cheesy holiday crap. Which I might not be my instinct.
David Ludfisk in chat has a couple of holiday traditions that I think we might be interested in.
Oh, sure.
Licking the crusty old scraps off of pans, stealing sausages from the rafters. Yeah, classic.
Oh yeah, let me
a
lot
of our families left
those are a given. I of course engage in licking the pans and stealing sausages.
I've had to sort of reintroduce that after my family's been in America for a few generations now.
Right,
and I think that they sort of left those behind. Back in Scandinavia.
That was definitely a key part of my upbringing for sure. Do you guys have any other Christmas traditions beyond those obvious ones?
Beyond various things to sniff, lick, and eat and scrape.
Steal.
We still do stockings, which is hilarious to me because I never participate in the opening or planting of stocking gifts. But my father, for whatever reason, like he's not a good gift giver, but he cannot help himself when it comes to stocking stuffers. Like he just loves going to the like drugstore and just buying like travel sized like toothpaste and putting it in a stocking and then just being pleased as punch when I like pull out the thing. He's like, oh, in case you gotta like, you got your toothpaste and your stuff, and here's your like working man's hand cream. I just like I like found all of these things because like I'll take them home in just like a big like grocery bag every Christmas, and then inevitably shove them in a closet. And then I had to move like 2 weeks ago. And I was like, oh my God, like, what am I going to do with like 30 fucking like things of tiny, like, what am I going to do with this stuff?
No. That's great. I haven't bought toothpaste in like months and months because I've just been collecting the tiny toothpastes. It's great. You just don't have to buy toothpaste, like pretty much.
Well,
ever.
I'll have him ship you stocking stuffers,
I'll
Chris,
take 'em.
and
Yeah.
you're more than welcome.
I'll unstuff those stockings.
Yeah.
Yeah, my dad has always just absolutely loved that shit of just finding stupid things that are like, this could be useful, and putting it in a Christmas stocking. But I think he has the self-awareness, which I really appreciate, that as my brother and I have gotten older, that we don't actually need any of that stuff. So now he goes and tries to buy the thing that he will crack up the most at when one of us take it out of a stocking because it's dumb.
Good way to go.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like, I mean, one time it was like a weird rubber puppet of human teeth with like wiggling eyes that came off the top of it, where you like stick your hand in it, and it was like, what? that was, I think, like the peak of just like, I don't know where you're even coming from with this, but he thought it was the funniest fucking shit.
Right.
When I took that
really good.
stupid rubber mouth out of a Christmas stocking.
If I were a dad, that's definitely that
Yeah,
would
it's
be
just
my
like,
Christmas
can I just like
tradition, for
find like a
sure.
3-dimensional manifestation of a dad joke and then put it in my kid's stocking along with like, whatever, a chocolate bar or something.
Sure.
But just
Yeah.
he's just, it's for him.
Oh, I
now
totally respect
only.
that. Yeah.
Yeah,
You don't need anything. You're a grown adult man.
I don't want any of it. Yeah,
Yeah.
my Christmas traditions are basically the same. All holiday traditions that I have are basically the same as that I have had since I was born, because my parents live a half hour from me, and I have a good relationship with them, and therefore I celebrate all major holidays at their house, literally the same place where I grew up. So I will form no new memories
Yeah.
at the end.
I've developed a recent tradition, actually, now that I'm thinking about it, which is that, like my family, my parents live in a town just sort of by themselves, away from all of the rest of their family, which is increasingly small anyway. And so it's just basically me and my parents for the day, and I will just like start feeding my mom drinks about 2:00. And the latest tradition is that I get my mom really happy. We completely ruin dinner while we're calling like the few relatives that we still maintain contact with, and just like she's just like a drunk mom, just saying like, I love you so much, just like the emotion just pours out of her on that one day of the year.
Yeah.
It's very good.
That's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, it's good when it's good that her version of being drunk is just being happy and effusive.
Oh yeah, no, she just gets incredibly
for
happy.
A given person, it can go in any direction. Yeah.
Yeah, she gets very happy. The roast beef is like brown, and then she just goes, "Well, what are you gonna do?" And then like passes out at like 8:00. It's very good.
Yeah. Nice.
All right.
That's a good weird tradition you have. I approve of that.
Yeah.
Eric Hall writes, as a former graphic designer who now manages other designers, I find I have no direct creative outlet at my job. Now in my 40s, I find myself having a hard time developing new hobbies to fill that creative void. I've recently dipped my toe into jewelry making and leatherworking, but I have a hard time committing the time needed to master a craft. Have you found yourselves interested in learning a new, not work-related skill but struggle to fully commit? What are your strategies for overcoming this?
Just
I don't have any strategies. I don't have any strategies for overcoming this, because I always inevitably fall off because I don't give it enough time.
Yeah,
Same.
me too. I really struggle with that. I think it's really challenging in general. I mean, I think it's both more possible to do than it ever has before in history, and probably harder to keep yourself to than it ever has been before, for the same reason, which is that there is just so much out there. There's so much information. There's so much like self-education you have easy access to.
Yep.
But by the same token, there's so much distraction, and there's just, I mean, it's so easy to get pulled in so many directions. I definitely struggle with this for sure. I have found, honestly, like the most reliable way for me to get myself to learn a new skill, this sucks to say because it's the opposite of what he asks, but is to like make it necessary to my job. Is to like give myself some responsibility at my job that relies on me learning that thing that I might not have been intrinsically part of my job, but I can make part of my job and then give myself a kick in the ass.
Yep. I feel like we lucked into Idle Thumbs being sort of a part of our personal identity since we were younger, because it's allowed like just your experience in audio broadcasting and like all the stupid video bullshit and like the build out of this room, which I talk about a lot because it's my only fucking hobby other than just like
me too.
Other
really.
than just like consuming media and going on a walk.
I mean, I have other hobbies, but they don't have anything to do with me like learning real skills or doing anything of value.
I mean,
I would-
we're also. I don't know if I'm doing anything of value in this room, but I'm definitely learning a lot
Well,
of new skills.
I mean, we're
of personal
arguably
value
doing
to
something
me.
of value.
Yeah.
One could make a case because we're doing a podcast right now for people paying us money to ask us questions.
Yeah,
so
that's true.
According to someone, we're allegedly doing something of value.
Yeah, through it's such a cheat. Idle Thumbs is such a cheat because through
Yeah.
it I've learned so many things purely out of the sort of passion and desire to learn how they work.
Yeah.
and then apply them to Idle Thumbs. But then that always ends up. All of the knowledge that I've learned from that also ends up cheating and being able to fold into my regular job because I work at a company that produces media. So
Right.
like that's also, it's not like we're up here in a band and then we go and sell
Right.
shoes or something, you know.
Mm-hmm.
What? What is the
I'm just like complete.
Oh, you mean
disconnect
like
of
we're shoe
person-
salesmen in our day jobs,
Yeah.
but we're also
Yeah.
in a band.
Yeah,
Man, that's a good story. That's a good, like, right? If you're like in a band, then that's your coming up story. That's pretty good. You're all shoe salesmen.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the sort of underlying what is the thing that allows you to learn a skill in your free time, I think probably is that actually someone asked me this recently, and this was my answer, was having some level of public accountability is what keeps me doing it. Like we've definitely missed weeks of podcast occasionally, but pretty rarely do we just straight up skip an episode of a podcast.
also,
It's
I mean,
pretty rare.
for the last year, for the last maybe couple of years, I feel like we've put out more than a podcast a week on
we
average.
have on average for
consistently.
sure. Yeah, definitely. And I think having that like public expectation of it definitely helps keep me honest. So yeah, I don't know how to just create that from nothing. I mean,
I would say, if that is like unattractive to you or not possible for whatever reason, like I would say just find anybody in that field that you might know, or like anybody who has like a hobby that you're, already that you're interested in pursuing, and then just like use them as like a sounding board or
well, and you
know.
did this recently, Nick.
Yeah, that's true. I did. Yeah. That's true. No, my girlfriend Janelle is an animator, and I had a couple weeks, and I thought, well, maybe I'll just try animating a little bit. And she basically said, like, I mean, I won't like be like a full-time teacher, but I will, pop in and like give you notes on whatever you're doing. And it was probably the one reason why I stuck with it as long as I did. I mean, I stopped, of course, because I'm a lazy piece of shit. But, but no, because at a certain point, it's it's not something I'm just going to keep doing for hours and hours a day. But yeah, I think like if you can find somebody who knows what they're talking about, and if they'll be kind enough to provide you with feedback, I feel like that is the sort of smaller version of that.
Yeah, there is no real replacement for having a teacher. I mean,
Yeah.
to the extent that I've learned a bunch of audio production and editing and things like that through Idle Thumbs, I will say that doing it completely on my own without any guidance whatsoever has probably led to it taking like a high multiplier of hours on what it theoretically had to take for me to actually get decent at it. And there are probably all sorts of things I just have never learned that if I had a mentor who legitimately was actually an expert at this stuff.
If there was another like podcast editor or like audio engineer down the hall from your old San Francisco apartment who you'd been like, hey, can you come take a look at this? They'd be like, here's 4 things that I'll tell you right now that will just shave 3 months of learning off of your early time doing this.
Exactly. Yeah. That's a tough thing about self-teaching. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But Nick, the stuff that you did was cool. You spent like a month learning how to be a 3D animator?
Like 3 weeks ish. Yeah.
3 weeks. Yeah. Nick posted. So I had no idea you were doing this until you posted a video of your reel to Twitter.
Nick wanted to wait till he got good before he showed anyone.
It was cool. It was cool to see. It was like, wow, I don't know anything about this stuff, and you just like made a bunch of dinosaurs walk around and stuff. Good job.
Thanks. Yeah, I mean, it was just fun to learn, even just like scrape the surface of it,
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
And that's always the danger. I feel like there's so many things I've done that with, where I've gotten to that baseline level of familiarity, but not a point at which it's like good or valuable. It's so fun to like learn when the entire possibility space is in front of you, and it's like all of the gains are easy gains.
Right, but then if you're like, I'm going to animate a short film. Oh, kill me! No.
That's the hard wall to climb for sure. Yeah, that's the part where I think like doing Idle Thumbs is helpful because you just have to keep plugging away at it because there's people who listen to it.
Right.
All right. So Matt asks, What's one piece of pop culture you wish you could be into or understand the hype around, but just don't care? As an example, I wish I could get excited about watching The International, but I really just don't care for Dota.
Premier League football and anime.
Those are interesting polls.
I can watch and respect. I can enjoy like World Cup or like other big league soccer matches, but I have a few friends who like either in England or in the US who follow just either Premier League or their nation's football, and it's like that's interesting, but I just can't get myself hyped up. And I wish that I gave two shits about anime other than a couple of tiny ones that I've seen and liked, but like I just can't. I just won't. Brain won't do it.
Those are two interesting cases for me because I feel like I would broaden out football to be, or soccer or whatever, to be sports, which honestly broadly is something I have just never been able to get interested in. And I kind of wish I could, because I theoretically, conceptually, like it's really cool. It's people just, like being amazing athletes and skillful people at a very unusual set of skills. And it's, you watch this like contest and it's low stakes in the sense that like no one's going to die or anything most of the time. And like, it's cool. Like that stuff is cool. But I just don't ever actually, it doesn't hold my attention, which is a bummer to me. Nick, anything come to mind for you?
God, I'm trying to think. I mean, I know there are like 1,000 things like this for me. Janelle would think of 10 right off the top of her head. But I mean, like just, this is very hyper specific, but like, I guess, public player unknowns battlegrounds or whatever, which is like, it's like a very specific example. But like, man, that game is massive, and I just, for whatever reason, it just I can't.
I'm with you on that too, actually. Yeah, I'm kind of with you there.
I recognize why it's popular, but it just playing it brings me no joy whatsoever, and I have no interest in sort of following it or anything. But man, people are obsessed with it, and I just feel like I'm just missing out on the biggest phenomenon. But I can't do it. I don't know.
I would say, I would, again, actually, in the same way I did with Jake, I would broaden that out for me, similarly to sports, to competitive online multiplayer games, which are something that I am, like, again, in theory, incredibly fascinated by and seem like such a rich vein of like competition and excitement and skill. But and this has increased the older I get. The older I get, the less I can bring myself to engage with it. The one exception I've really ever had is when we played a bunch of StarCraft together. But even then, I was playing like 2v2, which is not really like legitimate competitive StarCraft, right? I mean, if I were really into it, I would have been playing 1v1, but even then I couldn't handle it. So that's similar to sports for me. It's something I wish I could be more into than I am.
Yeah. I mean, I can't say anything as broadly as sports because like I really like baseball, don't give a crap about American football. But whenever I watch soccer in particular, it's captivating enough that I sort of start to feel myself getting interested and then always slide off.
I actually feel the same way about soccer because I love the World Cup, and I think because the World Cup takes like this fundamental kind of excitement of sports generally, which I feel like I understand in theory, but then it combines it with another thing I love, which is just like the world is like, it's like, oh, it's like,
sure.
It's like heartwarming to me. It's like, oh, cool. Like this is an event that actually puts together all of these nations of the world. It's why I conceptually think the Olympics are cool. It's like, there's just something sort of positive and wonderful about that. Like, it's cool that there's a sport that every country pretty much plays at some competitive level, right? And it's like, that's awesome. Like, I think that's so cool.
No, I relate to that though, Jake. I have the exact.
I played a ton of soccer as a kid. I played soccer up through high school.
What a common American experience.
I played soccer as well. Yeah,
and like I got to the point that I started to, at least like as teen levels, understand that it was more than just kids running around kicking a ball. But it's still never hooked up into my brain. But I want it to.
I actually,
but I don't want it to enough to like commit to making myself care just through dedicating hours to watching it.
I made a point like the last few months that we were in San Francisco, they were doing World Cup qualifiers, and I actually made a point to go out to a bar because it's hard to like watch that stuff at home. Like it's on bizarre channels and stuff that you just can't get. But like Janelle and I, like 2 different, maybe 3 different times, I said, let's go watch the United States World Cup qualifier on X day. and they were terrible. Like, they were just awful, and they didn't qualify, and they're not in the World Cup. And so I was just like kind of bummed about it. But like my yearning for like Premier League is like, that's clearly where like, you know, you can follow a team. They play every week. Like it's sort of like, I assume if you're really into, I don't know, like American baseball, and you live
as opposed to what? As opposed to which baseball, Nick? Sorry, as opposed to which baseball?
Well,
Japanese baseball, or
That
you know,
still has America. I guess I don't know the length of a Japanese baseball season, but that sport is still actually the same as opposed to American football versus
no. I'm
football.
saying
Literally
no.
sports.
I'm saying it's the place in which like the best players in the world go to play in that particular league, as opposed
you just mean
to
like an MLB game.
Yeah, like
Okay.
like I'm saying there are leagues in Europe that are clearly like at a level that, you know, American soccer is just not on, and like I wish that I had an attachment or even just a way to watch that stuff and be able to get into it, but it just seems impenetrable. Anyway, I had zero interest in basketball my entire life, and when I moved back to San Francisco, I started watching a couple of Warriors games, and when they became just like incredible, and I liked the players on the team to such a degree that it just became this very easy onboarding experience, and now I am like fucking hooked. And like I don't even watch that many games, but I just like read about it and like follow the sort of storylines, and I'm aware of kind of the trends. Like it's an evolving game as a game, which makes it more interesting to me. Like there are things happening in basketball right now that just, you can just feel like that game is just changing every year, and I find that to be the most interesting aspect of it.
It's like they're releasing like a new patch.
Yeah, I mean, honestly,
kind of
like
is.
yeah, kind of. Yeah, it's fun. Anyway.
All right, last question. Andy Gorman asks, Nick Brecken, have you seen the movie Everybody Wants Some? And if so, what are your thoughts?
God damn it.
I feel like we've gotten this question. It feels like this is a very familiar question.
Yeah.
They must have seen it by now.
I mean, my Christmas tradition is to watch the movie Everybody Wants Some every year, and so but I have not.
Sense.
But it's a new tradition. It's a new tradition, and so after
I see.
Christmas this year, I'll let you know.
All right, I look forward to seeing if that's true or not. We're gonna do another one of these in like a month, so
I mean, I'll have nothing
ready.
to do, so I may as well.
Yeah. All right. Well, I think that wraps it up for this Languid Ruination cast. Thank you for joining us. If you're interested in becoming a question asker on this, head over to patreon.com/idlethumbs and you'll find information there. Otherwise, we will be back with an episode of Idle Thumbs in a couple weeks. Full video game episode of Idle Thumbs. And thank you for listening. For Idle Thumbs, I'm Chris Remo.
I'm Nick Brecken. Wow.
Wow.
Wow, indeed.
Wow.
Wow.
Is that from? I don't know.
Who are you?
I don't
Who's
know
this
if that's
other
from-
person over
I'm
here?
Jake Rudkin.
Okay, thanks. Bye.
Bye.
There's a bet for $5, by the way, going on in chat that you don't watch that movie, Nick.
Oh.
Prove these haters wrong.
All right.
Although I did realize that it means that if I want, I could take the actual Nick and add him in as an excellent source now. So it's just as fucking ridiculous as we can possibly make it at this point.
Yeah.
Now that I have redundant multi-Nick unlocked. Oh, it's so good. So we can just...
Oh, gross. I don't want to see that.
out of sync with each other.
Yeah.
too.
Oh, they have different color balances,
no.
everything.
No.
It's actually not that bad.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
Oh, God. Here, so let's just cover up that shit, Nick, with a good Nick.
Strange.
Yeah,
Most pointless possible execution of this. All right, Jake, let's get going.
Oh, what? Chris, this is crucial. You're right. Hold on. I can't stop.
I know.
You know what? Let's
You
just...
definitely know all these stupid hotkeys pretty well at this point.
Yeah, oh. If I just... The precision placement of Nick. And then it's just on top of the monitor, so it doesn't fucking matter. What am I doing? Why am I not doing this? Obviously, it should be on this painting. Okay.
Yeah, that's definitely the right choice.
Yeah. No. Oh, I can't get it
No,
anymore.
good luck finding that thing again.
There we go.
How could you see that, Nick? What is happening?
I'm watching
on
the Twitch stream.
case
So
you wanted more stupidity.
I'm seeing this 30-second delayed, which is amazing.
Okay, I'm gonna call that good enough. It's stupid that I didn't horizontally mirror it, but I'll be okay. There we go. Okay, now, yeah, we have
What
H.
happens when I
No,
do
no. It just looks disgusting.
I'm sure it does.